"Thanks," she replied. "You seemed pretty deep in conversation with Fiona. Everything all right at work?" She shook her head. Marcus looked up, startled. For a fleeting second there was something in his eyes. Hesitation, perhaps? Then he smiled, the picture of nonchalance. "Yeah, just some last-minute tweaks to the quarterly report. You know how she is. Always over-prepared." Samantha nodded, forcing a smile, but a seed of suspicion had been planted. She knew Fiona too well. Over-prepared was not her style. The woman thrived on spontaneity. And Marcus, he wasn't usually so defensive. "It's pretty late into the night out here, I think," he said. The following morning, Samantha awoke to find Marcus already gone. A note on the kitchen counter read, "Gone for a run, back by 10." She poured herself a coffee and sat by the window, staring out at the gray Manhattan skyline. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a photo from Marcus's Instagram account. A shot of Central Park at sunrise. He had captioned it, "Grateful for mornings like this." Something about it felt staged. Marcus wasn't the type to post sentimental updates. His social media was usually an afterthought. Samantha clicked on his profile, scrolling through recent posts. There was a pattern: sunsets, scenic views, a couple of cryptic quotes about finding balance and happiness. They felt oddly curated, as though he were projecting an image rather than sharing a slice of his life. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was her personal assistant, Claire, dropping off a stack of reports. As Claire gathered her things to leave, she hesitated, then blurted out, "Is everything okay with Marcus? I notice he's been spending a lot of time with Fiona lately." Samantha froze. "What do you mean?" Claire flushed. "Oh, it's probably nothing. They just seem to be in meetings together a lot. I didn't mean to pry." "No, it's fine," Samantha said, forcing calm into her voice. "Thanks for letting me know." As the door closed behind Claire, Samantha's mind raced. A creeping dread settled over her. She thought of Marcus's late nights, Fiona's knowing smiles, the whispered conversations. It was all circumstantial, yet it painted a picture she couldn't ignore. Samantha had always trusted her instincts, and they were screaming at her now. Something was wrong. The following weekend, Samantha decided to confront her growing unease. A sharp strategist by nature, she knew better than to make assumptions without evidence. Still, the idea of investigating her husband, a man she had trusted implicitly, made her stomach turn. Was she being paranoid, or was there truly something lurking beneath the surface? On Saturday morning, Marcus packed his camera bag and kissed her on the cheek before heading out. "I'm meeting up with the photography group for a hike," he explained casually. "Might be late. Don't wait up for dinner." "Enjoy yourself," Samantha replied, masking her disquiet with a practiced smile. This wasn't unusual. Marcus had picked up photography as a hobby a year ago, claiming it helped him de-stress. He often spent weekends exploring scenic locations, chasing the perfect shot. Samantha had never questioned it before. But now, his absence felt like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. After he left, Samantha sat at the kitchen island, sipping her coffee as she mulled over her next move. Her mind returned to the whispers and glances between Marcus and Fiona. Then there was Claire's comment. Subtle, but enough to plant a nagging doubt. Could Fiona, her most trusted ally, be involved in whatever this was? Samantha decided she needed answers. She began her search where all secrets seemed to live these days, the digital world. She opened Marcus's laptop, which he rarely used but often left on the desk in their home office. Her hands hesitated on the keyboard, guilt momentarily washing over her. This felt invasive, wrong. But the lingering ache of doubt pushed her forward. The laptop was password protected, but Marcus was nothing if not predictable. After a few attempts, she successfully unlocked it using their wedding date. Relief mixed with a pang of sadness. Had he truly underestimated her that much? The desktop was sparse, with only a few folders. Samantha navigated to his email, scanning for anything unusual. There wasn't much to go on, just a few exchanges about photography equipment and a confirmation email for a workshop he'd attended months ago. She was about to close it when she noticed a folder in his cloud drive labeled Portfolio. She clicked it open and found dozens of photo files. Most were landscapes, sunsets, mountain vistas, cityscapes, beautiful but ordinary. Then she found a series of portraits that stopped her cold. They were all of Fiona. Fiona lounging on a bench, her expression playful. Fiona standing by a lake, her face illuminated by soft sunlight. Fiona smiling at the camera, her hair caught in the breeze. Samantha's heart sank as she clicked through the images, each one more intimate than the last. The timestamps showed they had been taken during Marcus's supposed photography outings. Her grip tightened on the mouse. The photos told a story she didn't want to believe, a story of betrayal, not just by her husband, but by someone she had considered a friend and confidant. The evidence was damning, yet it only deepened her confusion. Why would Fiona risk their friendship, her position at Gravestone, for this? And what did Marcus hope to gain? Samantha's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone buzzing. She glanced at the screen, a text from Marcus. Just reached the trailhead. Perfect weather today. The irony stung. He was lying to her even as she uncovered the truth. She closed the laptop and paced the room, her mind racing. This wasn't just a personal betrayal, it had professional implications too. Fiona was Gravestone's CFO, privy to the company's deepest secrets. If she and Marcus were conspiring together, it could spell disaster for Samantha's career and the company she had worked so hard to build. But Samantha wasn't one to act on impulse. She needed more than circumstantial evidence. She needed proof, something irrefutable that would expose the depth of their deception. And she knew exactly how to get it. The next day, Samantha reached out to an old friend, Evan Grant, a private investigator she had worked with years ago during a corporate espionage case. Evan was discreet, efficient, and fiercely loyal, qualities Samantha valued now more than ever. "Evan, I need your help," she said when he picked up. "Anything for you, Sam," he replied, his tone reassuring. "What's going on?" The giant's eyes narrowed suspiciously, and he nodded his head toward the door. "Maya," she hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I think Marcus is having an affair, and I think it involves Fiona Lawson." There was a pause. That's heavy. "Are you sure?" "I don't have concrete proof yet, but I've found enough to suspect it's more than just a fling. There might be other implications." She didn't elaborate, but she knew Evan would read between the lines. "Got it. I'll start digging. Do you want me to focus on his movements, her movements, or both?" "Both, and keep it quiet. I don't want them knowing I'm onto them." "Understood. I'll check back in a few days." As she hung up, Samantha felt a strange mix of relief and dread. She hated the idea of spying on Marcus, but she couldn't ignore the signs any longer. Whatever was happening, she needed to know the full truth. Over the next few days, Samantha threw herself into work, using the demands of Gravestone's upcoming AI launch as a distraction. She kept her interactions with Fiona professional, though every shared meeting felt like a test of her composure. Did Fiona sense that Samantha knew? Was her friendly demeanor a mask for guilt? Meanwhile, Marcus seemed oblivious to her growing suspicion. He continued his routine: morning runs, late nights editing photos, the occasional work dinner. Samantha played along, careful not to tip her hand. But inside she was seething. The man she had built a life with, the partner she had trusted with her dreams, was deceiving her in the most personal and calculated way. By the end of the week, Evan called with an update. "I've got something for you," he said. "You're not going to like it." "Tell me," Samantha replied, bracing herself. "I followed Marcus last weekend. He wasn't on a hike. He met Fiona at a cabin about an hour out of the city. They spent the day together, just the two of them. I also did some digging into Fiona's finances. She's been making regular payments to an offshore account. Samantha's blood ran cold. An offshore account? Why? I'm not sure yet, but it's significant. Too significant to be unrelated to your suspicions. The pieces began to click into place. Fiona wasn't just having an affair with Marcus. She was siphoning money, possibly from Gravestone. And Marcus, was he complicit? Or was he being used? Samantha thanked Evan and ended the call, her mind racing. This was no longer just a personal betrayal. It was a coordinated attack on everything she had built. The realization sent a chill down her spine. She wasn't just dealing with cheaters. She was dealing with traitors. That evening, Samantha sat in her home office, staring at the evidence Evan had sent her. Photos of Marcus and Fiona at the cabin, records of Fiona's financial transactions, and even a few suspicious emails between the two. The betrayal was undeniable now, and the implications were far-reaching, intentionally and secretly. Samantha felt a surge of anger, sharper and more focused than the heartbreak that had consumed her earlier. She wasn't a victim. She was a strategist, a fighter, and she wasn't going to let them destroy her life or her company. As she pieced together a plan, she thought about what Marcus and Fiona might be after. Were they planning to steal Gravestone's technology? Sabotage her career? The possibilities were endless, but one thing was certain. They had underestimated her. Samantha's resolve hardened. She would uncover the full extent of their betrayal, and when the time came, she would make them pay. Not with impulsive rage, but with calculated precision. She had spent her life building Gravestone, and she wasn't about to let anyone tear it down. Samantha spent the weekend methodically reviewing every piece of evidence Evan had sent her. The photos of Marcus and Fiona together at the cabin replayed in her mind like a relentless reel. The offshore transactions loomed large, raising questions about the scale of their betrayal. But Samantha was nothing if not patient. She knew that to truly confront them, she needed the full picture and a flawless plan. She decided to keep Marcus close, acting as though nothing had changed. Sunday morning, she cooked breakfast, a rarity given her demanding schedule. Marcus seemed surprised when he walked into the kitchen. "Wow, pancakes? What's the occasion?" he asked, smiling as he poured himself coffee. "Just felt like it," Samantha replied, keeping her tone light. She slid a plate toward him and leaned on the counter, watching his reaction carefully. "How was the hike yesterday?" Marcus didn't miss a beat. "Beautiful. The weather was perfect and the trails weren't crowded." He took a bite of his pancake and smiled. "You should come with me sometime. It's a great way to disconnect." Samantha nodded, suppressing the urge to call out his lie. Instead, she played along, asking innocuous questions about the hike and his photography. Marcus's answers were smooth, practiced, and utterly false. It was almost impressive how easily he lied to her face. After breakfast, Marcus announced he had errands to run. Samantha watched him leave, her mind already spinning with possibilities. Where was he really going? To see Fiona? Or was there something more sinister at play? She called Evan. "Can you track him today? He just left." "Already on it," Evan replied. "I've got one of my guys tailing him. I'll update you as soon as I know more." Samantha spent the rest of the day preparing for the week ahead. The Gravestone AI launch was days away, and the pressure was mounting. But even as she buried herself in work, the specter of Marcus and Fiona loomed over her. Every email from Fiona, every mention of Marcus in passing, felt like a jab to the gut. They were everywhere, their deceit woven into the fabric of her life. By evening, Evan called with an update. "You were right. He wasn't running errands. He met Fiona again, this time at a private club downtown. They stayed for about 2 hours and left separately." Samantha's heart sank. The frequency of their meetings was damning, but it also raised more questions. Why the secrecy? What were they planning? She asked Evan to dig deeper, particularly into Fiona's offshore transactions. Consider it done. Evan said. But Sam, you need to be careful. Whatever they're up to, it's big. Don't confront them until you've got all the pieces. I know, Samantha replied. But they're not going to see this coming. Ha ha, Sadora said, standing up. The following week, Samantha arrived at the office early, determined to maintain her composure. Gravestone Tech was abuzz with activity as the AI launch approached, and Fiona was her usual self, efficient, sharp, and unflappable. Watching Fiona operate with such ease only fueled Samantha's anger. How could she betray her so completely and act as though nothing was wrong? During their morning meetings, Samantha studied Fiona closely. Every word, every gesture, every glance was under scrutiny. After the meeting, Samantha asked Fiona to stay behind. I wanted to discuss something, she said, keeping her tone neutral. Have you had a chance to review the updated contracts for the AI platform? Fiona nodded. Yes, everything looks good. I'll have my team finalize the numbers by tomorrow. Samantha leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady. Good. I need to make sure everything is airtight. This launch is critical, and any misstep could be disastrous. Rhea put her hand over her lips, expressing deep mental concentration. Fiona met her gaze without flinching. You don't need to worry. I've got it under control. Patrick, the words were reassuring, but Samantha heard them differently now. Was Fiona truly confident, or was she playing her part in a larger scheme? Samantha dismissed her with a polite smile, her mind already racing. Whatever Fiona and Marcus were planning, it likely involved Gravestone's most valuable asset, the AI platform. That evening, Evan called with new information. I traced the offshore account Fiona's been using. It's linked to a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. The company recently purchased a significant amount of Gravestone stock. Samantha's blood ran cold. You're saying Fiona's trying to take control of the company? It looks that way. The purchases are incremental, small enough not to draw attention, but they're adding up. And here's the kicker. Marcus's name is tied to the account. The entire flight took less than a minute before they finally made it to taxi. Basil said, You know what you're waiting for. Samantha felt a wave of nausea. Marcus wasn't just complicit. He was an active participant. Her husband and her CFO were colluding to wrest control of the company she had built from the ground up. The betrayal was deeper than she had imagined. What's their endgame? Samantha asked, her voice tight with anger. My guess? They're planning to launch a hostile takeover. Fiona knows the AI platform is a game changer. If they control enough shares, they could force you out and claim credit for the launch. Samantha gripped the edge of her desk, her mind racing. Marcus and Fiona were playing a dangerous game, and they thought they could outmaneuver her, but they had underestimated her resolve and her capacity for retaliation. The next day, Samantha began laying the groundwork for her counterattack. She called an emergency meeting with her legal team, instructing them to review all contracts and safeguard her position as CEO. She also reached out to a trusted financial advisor who began discreetly monitoring stock activity to identify any unusual patterns. Meanwhile, Samantha started gathering her own evidence against Marcus and Fiona. She accessed security footage from Gravestone's headquarters, looking for any suspicious interactions between the two. What she found only confirmed her suspicions: late-night meetings, private conversations in Fiona's office, and frequent exchanges of documents. The trail was undeniable. Samantha also kept an eye on Marcus, carefully monitoring his movements and conversations. She noticed subtle changes in his behavior. Anxiety masked as enthusiasm, a nervous energy that betrayed his guilt. He talked about their future with forced optimism, as though trying to convince himself of the lies he was telling. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Marcus brought up the AI launch. You must be excited, he said, his tone casual. It's going to put Gravestone on the map in a way nothing else has." Mooney smiled. "It is," Samantha replied, keeping her voice steady. "But it's also a huge responsibility. There's a lot at stake." Marcus nodded, avoiding her gaze. "Well, if anyone can handle it, it's you," Samantha smiled, though the words rang hollow. She could see the cracks in his facade, the subtle signs of a man carrying a heavy secret, and she knew it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. The Duke was considerable in wealth, but acted cautiously to let the problem pass through. By the end of the week, Samantha had pieced together enough evidence to confront them, but she wasn't ready to act just yet. She needed to ensure that when she made her move, it would be definitive and irrevocable. Her plan was taking shape, and every detail mattered. She called Evan for an update. "I need you to track Fiona's next move," she said. "If she's making another stock purchase, I want to know about it immediately." "Will do," Evan replied. "And what about Marcus? Any plans to confront him?" "Not yet," Samantha said. "But when I do, it won't be subtle. The horrors that I avoid are the horrors that I fear the most." As she ended the call, Samantha felt a renewed sense of purpose. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also sharpened her resolve. Marcus and Fiona had underestimated her, and that would be their downfall. They had tried to destroy her, but they had forgotten one crucial fact. Samantha Graves didn't lose. "Let me inspect that," Samantha Graves said. By the following week, Samantha's plan had begun to solidify. The pieces of her investigation were aligning into a clear picture. Fiona and Marcus had not only betrayed her trust, but were orchestrating a calculated attempt to dismantle her life, both personally and professionally. The scale of their betrayal demanded not only retribution, but also absolute precision in her response. Samantha wasn't merely looking for justice. She intended to obliterate their ambitions. The first step was to secure Gravestone's AI platform. Samantha had always maintained control over the company's most critical projects, but she now realized that Fiona's proximity to the platform presented a potential vulnerability. She called a meeting with her lead engineers, ensuring that Fiona was conveniently tied up in another engagement. "I want a full security sweep of the platform," she told the team, her tone leaving no room for questions. "Source code, data models, everything. If there are any unauthorized accesses or suspicious activities, I want them flagged immediately." The engineers exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, Martin, hesitated before speaking. "Has there been a breach, Miss Graves?" "Not yet," Samantha replied, her voice steady. "This is a precaution. I need to know that Gravestone's core assets are protected." "How can I do that?" Dutton asked. Behind the scenes, Samantha also enlisted the help of an external cybersecurity firm to conduct an independent audit. It wasn't just about protecting the platform, it was about ensuring Fiona and Marcus wouldn't be able to exploit Gravestone's technology for their own gain. If they had already accessed sensitive data, Samantha wanted to know exactly what they had taken. While the technical team worked, Samantha turned her attention to the financial aspect of the betrayal. The stock purchases linked to Fiona's offshore account were troubling, but she needed more than a trail of transactions to take action. She coordinated with her financial advisor, who had been monitoring unusual activity in Gravestone's stock. "Fiona's shell company has been gradually acquiring shares," the advisor confirmed during their latest call. "It's a small percentage so far, but if it continues, it could become significant." "Can we block the purchases?" Samantha asked. "It's tricky," the advisor admitted. "The transactions are legal, at least on the surface. However, if we can prove collusion or insider trading, that changes everything." Samantha nodded. "Keep digging. I want every detail." At home, Samantha maintained her facade with Marcus, though the strain of their interactions was beginning to wear on her. His every word and action felt like a lie, Yet she forced herself to play the role of the unsuspecting wife. The more comfortable he felt, the more likely he was to slip up. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Marcus casually asked about the AI launch. "Is everything on track for the big day?" he said, scrolling through his phone. "Someone said they're just discussing whether or not they could turn on AI to help them on the launch." Marcus went on without swaying. "IRS. Of course," Samantha replied, keeping her tone light. "Why do you ask?" "Well, no reason," he said, shrugging. "Just curious. I know how much it means to you." The statement felt hollow, almost mocking. Samantha resisted the urge to confront him then and there. Instead, she turned the conversation back to him. "How's the photography going? Any new projects?" Marcus perked up at the mention of his hobby. "Actually, yes. I've been working on a new series. Portraits in natural light. I think it's some of my best work yet." Samantha smiled, though the words stung. She knew exactly who his best work featured. The image of Fiona's smiling face framed by sunlight was seared into her mind. But she said nothing, instead allowing him to bask in the illusion of her ignorance. The 15 minutes were clearing up and heading to the office when Samantha said Samantha's next move involved setting a trap. She needed undeniable proof of Fiona and Marcus's collusion, and she knew the best way to get it was to bait them into exposing themselves. With the AI launch looming, she saw an opportunity to create a controlled environment where their intentions would become clear. She called Fiona into her office for a one-on-one meeting. The CFO entered with her usual confidence, clipboard in hand. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, her tone professional. "Yes," Fiona answered. "Yes," Samantha said, gesturing for Fiona to sit. "I've been reviewing the final budget for the AI platform, and I noticed some discrepancies. I'd like your input." Fiona raised an eyebrow. "Discrepancies? I wasn't aware of any issues." Samantha handed her a fabricated report, carefully designed to appear genuine. It outlined inflated costs and missing funds, enough to raise alarm without being too obvious. "Take a look," she said. "I trust you to get to the bottom of this," Ender said. Fiona scanned the report, her expression neutral. "I'll dig into this and let you know what I find," she said, standing to leave. She turned and walked back to her lab. "Thank you," Samantha replied, watching her closely. "I appreciate your diligence." As Fiona walked out, Samantha felt a flicker of satisfaction. The seed had been planted. If Fiona and Marcus were indeed conspiring, this would force them to act and reveal their hand in the process. Over the next few days, Samantha monitored Fiona's behavior carefully. Sure enough, Fiona began working late, claiming she needed more time to resolve the discrepancies. Marcus, too, seemed unusually preoccupied, often stepping out to take phone calls or sending cryptic text messages. The tension between them was palpable, though they likely thought they were being discreet. Evan, who continued his surveillance, provided regular updates. "Fiona's been making more trips to that private club," he reported, "and Marcus met with her there last night. They seemed agitated." "Good," Samantha said. "Let them feel the pressure." The trap finally sprung during a key board meeting 2 days before the AI launch. Samantha had called the meeting to address the fabricated budget issues, knowing that Fiona would be forced to respond. Marcus, as her husband, was invited as a courtesy, though Samantha knew he would take the opportunity to support Fiona. As the meeting began, Samantha presented the discrepancies to the board, feigning concern. "These figures don't add up," she said, passing copies of the report around the table. "We need to ensure there's no impact on the launch." Fiona, sitting at the far end of the table, cleared her throat. "I've been looking into this," she said, her voice steady. "It appears to be an internal error. I'm confident we can resolve it quickly." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "An internal error? That's convenient." "I think I got distracted this morning," said Kyle. "Caught you." Fiona's composure faltered for a moment, but she recovered quickly. "I've already initiated an audit. There's no cause for alarm." The man sat back slowly, his hands resting lightly on his knees. "You've been here long?" The board members murmured among themselves, clearly uneasy. Samantha let the tension simmer before speaking again. "I appreciate your efforts, Fiona, but given the timing, I think it's best to bring in an external auditor. Transparency is key." Fiona's expression darkened, and Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The board members nodded in agreement, unaware of the true stakes. Samantha had anticipated this reaction. Her announcement wasn't just about the fabricated discrepancies. It was about setting the stage for what was to come. That evening, Evan called with the final piece of the puzzle. "I've got them," he said. Fiona and Marcus were recorded having a conversation at the club. They discussed the offshore account, the stock purchases, and their plan to use the AI platform as leverage. Samantha felt a surge of vindication. "Send me everything," she said. "It's time." She spent the rest of the night preparing for the confrontation, ensuring every detail was accounted for. By morning, she had all the evidence she needed to dismantle their scheme. The trap had been set, and now it was time to spring it. As Samantha reviewed the final steps of her plan, she felt a calm determination settle over her. Marcus and Fiona had tried to destroy her, but they had underestimated her resilience. Now they would face the full force of her wrath. The morning of the AI platform launch arrived, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Gravestone's headquarters were alive with activity. Engineers fine-tuning last-minute adjustments, marketing teams coordinating media outreach, and board members mingling in the executive lounge. The event had attracted industry leaders, journalists, and investors from around the globe. For Samantha, it was a stage set not only for triumph, but also for the unveiling of her enemy's treachery. She dressed deliberately, choosing a tailored navy suit that exuded authority. Her outward composure masked the storm within, but she had never felt sharper, more prepared. Today wasn't just about Gravestone's AI, it was about reclaiming her life and delivering the justice Marcus and Fiona so richly deserved. The launch event began with a grand presentation in the auditorium. Samantha took the stage to thunderous applause, her presence commanding as she unveiled Gravestone's newest innovation. The AI platform was revolutionary, promising advancements in everything from healthcare diagnostics to logistics automation. She spoke with passion, her voice steady, as she outlined the company's vision for the future. Excellent, but as she scanned the crowd, her eyes locked briefly on Marcus and Fiona, seated together near the front. Fiona wore a polished expression of confidence, while Marcus nodded along as though he were Samantha's greatest supporter. The sight of them together ignited a spark of anger deep within her, but she pushed it aside. The time for action was fast approaching. After the presentation, Samantha led the audience into the executive lounge for a networking session. Journalists jotted down notes, executives exchanged business cards, and investors discussed the platform's potential. Samantha moved through the room with practiced ease, answering questions and engaging with key stakeholders. But her mind was focused elsewhere. At precisely 2 p.m., she excused herself from the crowd and made her way to the boardroom, where the company's executives were gathering for a private meeting. Fiona was already there, seated at the table, her tablet open in front of her. Marcus entered moments later, flashing Samantha a quick smile as he took a seat near the corner. Neither of them had any inkling of what was about to unfold. The fourth explosion set the building on fire. Samantha began the meeting with a brief overview of the launch's success. The executives were pleased, their expressions reflecting the buzz surrounding Gravestone's innovation. But as the discussion shifted toward finances and projections, Samantha steered the conversation in a new direction. "I've asked our external auditor to provide an update on recent financial activity," she announced, her tone calm but firm. "There have been some irregularities that warrant discussion," she said. The room fell silent as a representative from the auditing firm entered, carrying a stack of documents. He distributed copies to the executives, who began flipping through the pages with growing concern. Fiona remained still, her face carefully neutral, while Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. These documents detail unauthorized stock purchases made through a shell company linked to one of our executives, Samantha continued, her voice icy. The funds were funneled through an offshore account, bypassing standard oversight.
Yes.
She turned her gaze to Fiona, who finally spoke, her voice tight. I wasn't aware of any such activity. Are you suggesting someone within Gravestone is responsible? Samantha's lips curved into a cold smile. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. She tapped a button on the conference room's remote, and the screen behind her lit up with a timeline of transactions, emails, and security footage. It was a damning mosaic of evidence, each piece meticulously tied to Fiona and Marcus's activities. The executives murmured in shock as the full scope of the betrayal became clear. Fiona's mask of professionalism cracked. This is a misunderstanding, she said quickly. These transactions, there must be an explanation. Indeed, there is, Samantha replied, her voice sharp. You orchestrated a scheme to acquire Gravestone stock and leverage the AI platform for personal gain. And you didn't do it alone. She turned to Marcus, whose face had gone pale. Care to explain your role in this, Marcus? Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The room's attention was fixed on him, and the weight of his guilt was palpable. Finally, he stammered, Samantha, you're taking this out of context? I can explain? Save it, Samantha snapped. The evidence speaks for itself. You both betrayed my trust, my company, and everything I've built. Did you really think you could get away with it? Fiona looked desperate now. This is all a misunderstanding. Samantha, we've worked together for years. You're right, Samantha interrupted. We have. And that's what makes your betrayal so unforgivable. The confrontation escalated as Samantha outlined the consequences of their actions. She informed the board that she had already taken steps to neutralize the threat. Fiona's accounts had been frozen, the shell company exposed, and Gravestone's legal team was preparing to file charges. As for Marcus, Samantha made it clear that their marriage was over. She had already contacted her attorney to begin divorce proceedings. I don't just want you out of my life, she said, her voice cold as steel. I want you both to face the consequences of your actions. You underestimated me, and now you'll pay the price. Fiona's confident facade crumbled completely. She slumped in her chair, defeated, as the weight of her actions bore down on her. Marcus, too, was visibly shaken, his attempts at damage control falling flat. For the first time, they realized the full extent of Samantha's power and the futility of their schemes. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Fiona was removed from her position as CFO and escorted out of the building by security. Gravestone's legal team worked closely with authorities to ensure she faced prosecution for her financial crimes. Marcus, meanwhile, found himself cut off from the life he had once shared with Samantha. His role in the betrayal left him ostracized and humiliated, his carefully curated image shattered. As the dust settled, Samantha stood on the rooftop terrace of Gravestone's headquarters, gazing out at the city skyline. The AI platform had launched successfully, the betrayal had been exposed, and justice was in motion. But the victory was bittersweet. Samantha knew she would carry the scars of Marcus and Fiona's betrayal for years to come. Trust, once broken, was difficult to rebuild. Yet she also felt a sense of liberation. She had faced her enemies head-on and emerged stronger, her resolve unshaken. For Samantha, this wasn't just an ending, it was a new beginning. She would rebuild, not as the woman who had been betrayed, but as the woman who had triumphed. Samantha Graves stood at the center of her world, her name synonymous with power and success. As CEO of Gravestone Tech, a multi-billion-dollar empire she had built from scratch, Samantha was revered as a visionary. Her sharp mind, commanding presence, and meticulous attention to detail earned her a place in the elite echelons of the corporate world. But Samantha prided herself most on her ability to see through people. No one could deceive her, or so she believed. It was a Friday evening, and the annual Gravestone Tech Gala was in full swing. The ballroom at the Four Seasons Hotel gleamed with opulence. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, while the finest champagne flowed freely. Samantha stood near the grand piano, surrounded by colleagues, journalists, and industry titans, all eager to catch a moment of her time. She wore a tailored black dress that spoke of elegance and authority, her diamond earrings catching the light as she nodded thoughtfully to a venture capitalist's proposal. End of section 2. Her husband, Marcus, was across the room, laughing with a group of board members. Samantha caught his eye, and he raised his glass to her, his smile warm and easy. She felt a pang of affection. Marcus had been her rock during the grueling early years of her career. He had left his job as a marketing executive to support her dream, and his unwavering faith in her had been a cornerstone of their marriage. When all went well, Marcus had affirmatively declared himself their president. She had been grateful, but lately something felt off. Marcus had been distant, distracted. His once devoted attentions were replaced by late nights at the gym and impromptu networking dinners. Samantha had dismissed her doubts as paranoia. After all, she was under immense pressure with the upcoming launch of Gravestone's groundbreaking AI platform. Still, a faint unease gnawed at her, growing louder in quiet moments. The evening's festivities reached their zenith with Samantha's speech. She took the stage to a standing ovation, delivering a powerful address about innovation, perseverance, and the future of technology. The applause thundered, and she basked in the adoration of her audience. But as she scanned the crowd, her eyes settled on Marcus again. He wasn't clapping. Instead, he was leaning close to Fiona Lawson, Gravestone's CEO. Their heads were tilted together, and Fiona whispered something that made him laugh softly. It was nothing, just a harmless exchange, Samantha told herself. Fiona had been with Gravestone since the beginning and was one of Samantha's most trusted allies. Yet the sight unsettled her. She noted the subtle intimacy of their posture, the way Marcus's hand lingered on Fiona's arm. She shook off the thought and finished her speech to rapturous applause. After the event, Samantha and Marcus shared a limousine ride home. The streets of Manhattan blurred past the tinted windows as she leaned back against the leather seat, exhaustion setting in. Marcus, sitting across from her, scrolled through his phone. "Great speech tonight," he said without looking up.